The truth matters, but only if you see it. I'm Jessica Denson, and this is Lights On. My motto for years has been silence is not an option, but I want to take a moment today to address something I have been largely silent on: the media's coverage, or lack thereof, of my case. Viewers who have found me on this network, and great credit to them, have often asked, going back to when I first appeared and up to this day, why is this the first time I've heard of you? Given what my team and I have accomplished, it's not normal. And it would be dishonest of me to continue pretending that it is. When I first started this fight back in 2017, I almost had to step back from myself to acknowledge something I was so desperately resisting: that if I was ever going to make a difference in a suffering world, which I cared deeply to do, I had to start defending my own worth, to recognize that I had value and that my well-being and success mattered to the world. 6 years later, I think maybe even now more than ever, I need to step back and stand up for this woman again. Me, but let's just distance. I find distancing myself gives me permission, and maybe that's wrong. Maybe I shouldn't have to. But this woman took on a president's campaign at the apex of his power, without means and even without legal support. She was a citizen who was threatened with bankruptcy for speaking the truth about a man who threatened to end democracy, and does to this day. She came clean long before many others to sound the alarm, without a book to sell. And she was proving in courts of law, before a single criminal count was ever filed, that Donald J. Trump is not invincible. He is not above the law. 2 weeks ago, this woman and the team she has amassed since starting alone through epic defeats and triumphs forever nullified the means through which the world's preeminent con artist, an American dictator in waiting, silenced hundreds of people and hid the truth from the American people. You would think that this story was worthy of telling the American people. It is. And yet, I'll call them out, CNN and MSNBC have not reported this. I know there are wars raging, and devastating and unprecedented news is incessant. But there are shows that report Trump legal news ad nauseum and have not taken 30 seconds to report this or the developments of this case in years, with some exceptions where my name was notably omitted from news about my case. In fact, I think the dire state of the world that we are in is even more reason why a story like this must be told. People need to know what is possible. People need to know that a woman was behind this, and that it was not money or power, so-called in the world's conception of power, that led her to victory against the terrorist that is Donald Trump. People need to know that good is alive, and that when truth is applied and fought for, it prevails. I borrowed that line that I opened the show with, "The truth matters, but only if you see it," from the anchor of the 11th hour on MSNBC. I appreciate her, as I do many of the anchors and their shows. And I just want this audience to know that I have made myself available to all of these shows as I write my book, well before I publish. And I've been making myself available for years, actually. I do not aspire to be a fixture in cable news, far from it. But the lack of coverage in such a significant case to our democracy and the man who threatens to take it all away is not only bizarre, it is wrong. Our democracy, the future of the free world, is on the line. And the major networks, dwindling as they may be, cannot afford to fail in my case or any other. I know you're watching me. We're watching you too.
Honestly, I'd like to just go back to what you opened with.
Please. Oh, I love that. Please.
Well, I think one, it's yes, the case itself is important and has flown under the radar, but it's also a reminder of how much gets lost when our corporate media focus almost exclusively on the sensational. And again, as you mentioned, there's a lot of very serious stuff going on in the world.
Yes.
There always is.
Yes.
But even when there isn't, the media seems to lose sight of important issues that get lost if they don't focus on them. From your case to the dysfunction in not just the House of Representatives, but in the Senate, because Republicans are placing holds on nominees.
Military
senators are allowed to, upend the work of the entire Senate and put our national security at risk. The corruption of the Supreme Court, specifically of Clarence Thomas, Ginny Thomas's role in January 6th, and on and on and on. These things just get left by the wayside. And because there's so much else going on, people forget about them. Things get normalized. We saw that with Donald. He was throwing so much at the wall all the time that his bad behavior just came to be assumed to be baked in, so it didn't matter anymore. Well, that's the assessment of the corporate media, not of the American voter. So anyway, I appreciate your opening. I think it's very important to remind people, not just about individual cases or individual newsworthy events happening in the country, but also the actual people behind these stories. So.
Yeah, Mary, that to me has been, I share this with my team, and I come to this as like a storyteller, as a creative, that's really my heart. I'm an artist. And that to connect with people, you have to put a human face to something. I mean, you have to put a face and a name to this for people to relate to it. That is how we connect with each other. That is how, there's still so many people out there that think Donald Trump's going to get away with all of this, that they think that, the American people that follow him are going to continue to be blindsided for the rest of their lives. And I'm living proof in more ways than one that none of that is true, that there is a breakthrough, but people need to put a face and a name to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a disservice is done when we don't do that. And I think it also becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, it does.
Because it does give people the wrong idea. And, there are plenty of reasons for people to think that Donald keeps getting away with things because, he does. But he also has been held accountable, and he has lost, and he's continuing to lose. And he will continue to become weaker if we focus on our individual and collective victories against him.
Yeah, we absolutely have to. I mean, I even think sometimes, Mary, this whole country, you were a huge part of this. You and I want to bring this up maybe later in the episode, we're kind of fighting our NDA battles in the summer of 2020, and we had some interesting intersections. But you were at the heart of the collective investment that this country made in ousting Donald Trump from the presidency. And it was traumatic. One thing I will never forget is a tweet that somebody put out that said, I would crawl over COVID-laced broken glass to cast a vote for Joe Biden. I mean, that's the kind of urgency that we all understood, and the kind of, heart and effort that we put into getting him out of the White House. Yeah. And then right off of the bat, we don't even get to savor the victory for a second. We have January 6th. I mean, this is truly the work of terrorists to try to steal our joy, to minimize our victory, to in fact hide it and obscure it, pretend like it never even happened. And that is incredibly discouraging. We need to understand the value of our own work. And we have done amazing things.
Yeah, I think it gets understated. What we did in November 2020 was not simply win an election. We saved democracy from the jaws of autocracy. Yes. And I would argue, actually, that the diminution of our ability to enjoy and savor that victory started right away, because Donald never conceded the election, because he's a sore loser and can never admit when he loses. So we had 78 days, I think, of the big lie being allowed to spread simultaneously with an incitement being planned, but we didn't know about that until January 6th. So yeah, we never really got to relax. I mean, I obviously we enjoyed when the election was called for Joe Biden, and we enjoyed the inauguration, but everything was so fraught because we never knew what was what could possibly happen next. And as a result of the fact that, one, I think a lot of Donald's egregious behavior has been normalized and continues to be normalized by the corporate media, and two, because the Republican Party has proven to be even more craven than I could possibly have imagined back in 2016. Things are worse now than they were in December 2020, which is a horrifying thing to have to say.